I am 103 years old. That number doesn't feel real anymore. It feels borrowed, like a coat I keep meaning to return. People assume that living this long makes you wise. What it really makes you is careful with the truth. Because once you've watched nearly everyone you love disappear, you learn how heavy a single sentence can be. There is something I understood once, briefly, when I was young. I saw it clearly. I felt it in my chest. And then I did what most people do. I set it down and told myself I would come back to it later. I never did. I don't speak loudly anymore. My voice has learned what time can do to words. Some of them don't survive being shouted. They only make it through when whispered. Here is the truth that waited 76 years to fully land. Love does not wait for your life to slow down. It leaves quietly while you're busy. I didn't learn that at 103, I learned it at 27. But knowing something and living it are not the same thing. I spent the rest of my life confusing the two. There were so many moments I thought didn't matter. A phone call I planned to make the next day, a hand I didn't hold because my arms were full, a sentence that began with, "Not now." I thought time was generous. I thought it would tap me on the shoulder before it took anything important. It doesn't. If you're listening to this, I want you to pause for just a second. Not to do anything dramatic, just to notice who you're assuming will always be there. Because I made that assumption too, and it cost me more than any mistake I ever made on purpose. This story isn't about tragedy. It's about delay, about the quiet damage done by good intentions postponed. I can still see the first moment I ignored the lesson. I didn't know it then. I only know now, looking back, how clearly life was trying to speak to me. It was the summer I lost something small, and by ignoring it, I set myself up to lose everything else the same way. I grew up in Ohio, in a house that smelled like starch and coffee. My father, Henry, woke before the sun. My mother, Margaret, hummed when she was nervous, which was often. We didn't talk about feelings. We showed them by staying. The first time life tried to teach me its lesson, I was 27 years old, newly married, busy in the way young people think is important. My husband's name was Robert. Everyone called him Bobby. He laughed with his whole body, like it surprised him every time. We had plans stacked neatly in our heads, like boxes labeled later. One afternoon, my mother called while I was ironing shirts. She asked if I could come by, just to sit. Her voice sounded smaller than usual. I told her not today. I said I'd come by on Sunday. I said I had time. 2 days later, she slipped on the back steps, hit her head. She didn't die right away. That almost made it worse. She waited for me. I arrived at the hospital too late to have a real conversation, but early enough to see her try. Her lips moved, her eyes searched. I leaned close and promised I was there now. She smiled. That was the last thing she did. After the funeral, I felt hollow but functional. People praised my strength. I accepted the compliment, not realizing it was already teaching me the wrong lesson. I told myself this was how life worked. Loss happened. You survived. You moved on. But something strange followed me after that, a quiet pressure, like a sentence left unfinished. I made a vow at her graveside. I remember the words exactly. I won't wait like that again. And for a little while I meant it. I called my father more often. I listened when Robert spoke instead of half listening. I noticed sunsets. I touched arms. I said I love you without a reason. But life doesn't test promises right away. It waits until you forget why you made them. As the years passed, the sharpness of that loss dulled. The memory stayed, but the urgency faded. It always does. I didn't realize that the lesson had an expiration date, and I was already letting it slip. I can still see the first moment I ignored the lesson. I didn't know it then. I only know now, looking back, how clearly life was trying to speak to me. It was the summer I lost something small, And by ignoring it, I set myself up to lose everything else the same way. Forgetting doesn't happen all at once. It arrives politely. It tells you you're doing your best. Robert and I had 2 children, Susan first, then Michael. My world filled with schedules and responsibility. I mistook motion for meaning. My father aged quietly. He never asked for much. When he called, it was usually to tell me something small. A bird he'd seen, a neighbor who moved away. I listened, but I was always elsewhere. I told myself I would visit soon. I told myself he knew I loved him. I told myself the same lies I'd sworn not to believe. When he died, there was no drama. Just a call in the evening, a calm voice, a sentence that didn't echo until days later. I cried less than I expected. That frightened me more than the grief. Years folded into decades. Robert grew quieter, not unhappy, just less urgent. We loved each other in a practiced way. We assumed understanding replaced effort. One night, he tried to tell me something. I was tired. I said, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Tomorrow came. He didn't bring it up again. I never asked. He died of a heart attack at 62. I still don't know what he wanted to say. That's how forgetting works. You don't notice what you've lost until the silence hardens around it. Susan moved across the country. Michael stayed nearby but drifted into his own life. I was proud of them. I was distant from them. I called that balance. I kept waiting for a moment when everything would slow down, when I could finally give people the attention I owed them. That moment never arrived. And still, I believed I was doing fine, because nothing had forced me to stop yet. Time is patient. It lets you think you're winning until it doesn't. As the years passed, the sharpness of that loss dulled. The memory stayed, but the urgency faded. It always does. I didn't realize that the lesson had an expiration date, and I was already letting it slip. I can still see the first moment I ignored the lesson. I didn't know it then. I only know now, looking back, how clearly life was trying to speak to me. It was the summer I lost something small, and by ignoring it, I set myself up to lose everything else the same way. Regret doesn't announce itself. It collects. It shows up as a name you avoid thinking about, a photograph you don't display, a question you don't finish asking yourself. Susan stopped calling as often. I told myself she was busy. Michael became polite instead of open. I told myself that was adulthood. One Christmas, I realized I couldn't remember the sound of Robert's laugh. That terrified me more than his death. I tried to fix things the way people do when it's already late. Longer calls, birthday cards with careful handwriting, offers to visit sometime soon. The problem with later is that it keeps moving. Susan's marriage failed. I found out months after the fact. She didn't blame me. That somehow hurt more? Michael had a child, my first grandchild. I visited once, took pictures, told myself I'd be more present next year. Next year turned into a blur of reasons. When Susan got sick, it wasn't sudden like my mother. It was slow, which gave me something worse than shock. It gave me hope. I visited, but I talked about practical things. I avoided the weight of what was happening. I thought optimism was kindness. She died on a Tuesday morning. I was packing a bag to see her the next day. At the funeral, I stood next to my son and felt the distance between us like a wall we'd both built quietly. That was when I first understood that regret isn't about what you did wrong. It's about what you kept postponing until it ran out of time. I sat alone most evenings after that, thinking about all the moments that felt insignificant when they were happening. They were everything, and I was running out of chances to remember that. Living past 90 strips away illusions. You stop planning, you start inventorying. I live in a small room now. There are fewer objects, but more memories. They visit without asking. I think about the conversations I assumed would repeat themselves. They don't. Everyone was unique, disposable only once. Michael visits sometimes. We are gentle with each other, careful, like people handling something already cracked. I don't try to fix the past anymore. I only try to understand it. Here is what I see clearly now. Love needs proof more often than we think. Not grand gestures, presence, attention, time given when it's inconvenient. If you are listening to this and there is someone you keep meaning to call, ask yourself why you're waiting. Be honest, it's rarely a good reason. I used to think urgency was rude, that taking your time was wisdom. I confused patience with avoidance. Time doesn't reward restraint. It rewards courage. The courage to say things early, to show up before you're ready. I don't feel bitter, just awake, very late. Some nights I practice saying the things I never said. They land softly in the room and disappear. I wish I had known that love doesn't store well. It has to be used. I wish I had understood that later is a fragile promise. And I wish someone this old had told me that when I was young enough to listen. There is one final truth I want to leave you with. It isn't dramatic. It won't change the world. It might change your evening. The people you love are not waiting for the perfect version of you. They are waiting for the present one. Every time you choose not now, you are betting against time. And time has never lost. If I could go back, I wouldn't try to fix everything. I would just show up sooner, speak earlier, stay a little longer. That's all most of us ever needed. I am 103 years old. I don't have many days left, but I have clarity. And clarity is expensive. It costs a lifetime. If this story stirred something uncomfortable in you, don't push it away. That discomfort is attention asking to be used. Call someone. Sit with someone. Listen without planning your response. You don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to do it before it becomes memory. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories told by someone who waited too long, then stay with me. Not because I have answers, but because I've lived the consequences. And if my voice can save you from even one quiet regret, then this long life will have finally finished teaching its lesson.